All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another interview for the AP Taiwan Project Spotlight. Our guest for today is Mr. Kevin Yao, an experienced educator who founded the PrepMasters Institute in Taipei in 2018. He currently holds the record for over 15 years of perfect scores on both the SAT and the ACT, being the only educator in Taiwan to do so. So without further ado, let's get the interview started.
All right, let's go.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself, like where you were born, where you currently live, and just some personal background in general?
Yeah, so I was born in Taiwan, but we moved over to the States when we were like in 5th grade, something like that. And lived in the States for about 15 years. But then afterwards, for work, I came back to Taiwan. Or for me, it wasn't so much of coming back. It was more like a brand new country for me because I've been away for so long. I literally remember nothing about it. And because I used to live in Tainan, which is not Taipei. And so, yeah, everything's entirely different.
So I know that you mentioned to me that you moved to America when you were in 5th grade.
Yep.
What brought you and your family to America when you were in 5th grade?
I think it's more for the education system, to be honest. I think as a kid, I was not the model, Asian student. I think, in retrospect, I think it's just because there's a lack of established goals that we were taught to learn for learning's sake, but then not really having any practical purpose to it or applications for it. And I think that's why I was not really interested in school. We moved over for the education part, and then it was just smooth from there, right? Because I think just the American sort of mindset when it comes to education is pretty open-minded, right? They let you explore, they try to incentivize you with reason instead of just order.
I know in Taiwan, a lot of international students, especially parents, they really think that the American education system is a lot easier than the Taiwanese one. Do you think that's necessarily true, or is there more behind it?
I think there's some truth behind it, but then not necessarily. I think it's more because they don't want to make it too standardized, that they don't want to make the erroneous assumption that everyone fits into one mold. So they do encourage you to, of course, drive really hard for the parts that you're really good at, right? Math, science, art, whatever it is. But they don't make it hard requirements. So you're not spending 8 hours a day plus after school hours plus weekend hours, doing stuff that you are absolutely not interested in. They give you that freedom, so you can choose to do all that and more if you would like, as well as maybe picking up like a part-time job on the side, right? That's what they allow for. So it's really a mindset shift, I suppose. It's like the go-getters will still do just as much, if not more. So I think it's not necessarily easier, but there's a lot of play, right? And I think it's up to the students and parents to kind of design that play so it contributes to their long-term growth.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. Being like a in Chinese, 小留学生, a lot of my friends who still go to international schools here, they always are like, oh, it must be so much easier for you. I've seen your math homework, can't be that hard. But I feel like, especially with college applications, there's a lot of extra stuff to it.
Right.
Being educator right next to the best American school in the country, do you see that same mindset in those students that you tutor or teach?
Well, yes and no. I would say a lot of it is open for them to play with. Some of them dedicate themselves towards certain aspects. For example, some people are very, very into sports, right? So if they're in basketball, volleyball, right? Those are really, really big sports at TAS. So, for them, it's they're way too dedicated towards it. So I think sometimes that focus on studies or finding your path may be a little bit blurred out for them because there's so much attraction coming from the sports side. So yes, that's offered, but it depends again what you do with it, as well as the clubs that they offer. There's so many. What you want to go into, it's entirely up to you. right? But I would say still out of the students that I've seen, like it's not just from TS, it's just all around. I would say at least 70% of the students are entirely lost. They do it because they've been recommended, or it's required, or their friends do it, or their parents tell them, right? But they don't really know what they're really doing it for. And I think, it's probably no surprise that a lot of them feel extremely frustrated, right? And stressed out because simply it's not their thing, right? So I think there's been a lack of focus on finding out who they really are and what's their place, in this world.
Yeah, so moving back to more of your personal side, how did being Taiwanese impact your childhood experiences, especially comparing yourself to those around you?
So when we first went over to the States, it was kind of an interesting experience because I was surrounded by other people who don't really know the language, being that we had only gone to like a cram school for about a year and a half. And so obviously everyone's struggling. But I think it's actually surprisingly very nurturing environment because I went into their ESL program and, most of my friends were like Vietnamese, Mexican, people from all over the place, right? And I think the program really helped a lot in getting us to, be assimilated, by the mainstream. But being Taiwanese, it was kind of unique in that we actually had no other Taiwanese people. So it was interesting, right? But I think that's why I'm much more accepting of, almost everything, right? Because I absorb other people's cultures, right? And I think that's kind of a healthy mindset, right? As I absorb the American culture.
That's for sure. To put it into perspective for our audience, where did you move to when you went to the States?
I went to San Jose. So it's, at the time, yes, there were some Asians, but they're in like little pockets, right? But most of the places, like San Jose, is mainly Vietnamese and Mexican.
Okay. Did you travel a lot back to Taiwan when you were around like high school age or whatnot?
I only came back once, actually. Yeah, because of the whole mandatory military service thing. So right. I was not able to come back at all, and so we just didn't. Right? It was not until I graduated that I came back. Right?
Yeah. High school?
No, like college. Yeah. So but then at the time it was more like because like a semi-foreigner, if I stay within 30 days, it's fine. It's like there has some rules around that. Yeah, so I was able to come back and sort of like experience Taiwan. Yeah, but originally I was thinking about going to Korea or Thailand because their pay was a lot higher. But but I decided to go with a place with a familiar language.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one question on top of that: was your like career focus always been towards educating others, or has it ever like shifted away?
Well, I studied electrical engineering, so that was supposed to be my thing. But I think like when it comes to education, it has always been an interest of mine. So what happened is that after I took the SAT back in like junior year, I actually started teaching, right, as a high school student to teach, those like freshmen and sophomores. And so I think just kind of grew from there. And of course, later on, I joined Prince Revere when I was in college. And that's when it formally, began, like this whole journey. Yeah, but it's been a strong interest of mine, and I do absolutely enjoy every bit of it.
That's very good to hear from a teacher.
Yeah.
How do you think your experiences with or living in the American education system has influenced your career being an educator here back in Taiwan?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a constant struggle / amalgamation of the two systems, because I think that while the Western thoughts are really good in terms of offering them freedom, but the Eastern sort of thoughts are also helpful in providing for that structure. So I think the best way is really like a hybrid approach where you really have structure but you allow for freedom, so there's room for them to breathe, for them to play, for them to really comprehend from the inside out, not just as lectures.
Yeah, and just a bit of background information. I am currently a student at the PrepMasters Institute for a summer SAT intensive. It's been a blast coming here for the past 3 weeks. How do you think your whole mindset with the hybrid Western Eastern thing has impacted the way our own classes are structured?
Yeah, actually it has a lot to do with it because, like I just mentioned, right, it's my personal belief that there's no right system, perfect system, but it's really blending what everyone is looking for, right? So you can see from the cohorts that we have, some are from, purely American, schools, some are somewhere in between, things like that. And so obviously there's no one size fits all. But that's why in my course I strongly recommend students really they listen to the techniques I've got and listen to the reasoning that I've got, but really bring it into their own minds and make it their own, right? I think that's when true learning happens, when you make it your own and you get to defend it. Yeah. So yeah, definitely every bit of it is tailored towards everybody.
Yeah. And if you could give a piece of advice to all of the rising junior, rising seniors, both being Taiwanese in America or Taiwanese here, what would it be?
Well, if your path is really going towards the US, I would say you need to have a mind of your own, because going with what everyone else has got, going for the super standard, either you're an engineer or you're a doctor, that's not going to make you happy most of the time. The stats actually show that at least 60% of the students going to college would change their major at least twice. 60%. So this is not something that to be taken lightly, right? So more important than your actual studies, I think the direction, right, of it will sort of change your life's path, right? So if you have chosen wisely, it could benefit you. If not, you will be in agony for maybe 4 years and then trying to do grad school, things like that. So I think, especially being I think Asian, Taiwanese, we have a lot of suggestions from our parents or from our, uncles, whatever, right? But I think it's important for you to sort of establish what you really want to do in life, right? Because that's your own work, right? That's what you're going to be doing for the rest of, 6 decades, 7, 8, 6. Maybe, right? So that's a really long time, and no one gets to live that for you, right? Nor do they have the right to live that for you, right? It's just you and your own. So I think, that would be my general suggestion, find your path and really, whatever it is, as long as it's not illegal, then go bravely, right, into it, right? Because with that passion, that undying passion, you can do anything.
That was very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Final question for this interview to wrap it up.
Yeah.
To you, what does it mean to be Taiwanese?
I think the Taiwanese identity is a little bit complex, because it depends on your family's influence, right? I think my family actually my grandfather actually came from Guangdong or something like that, and so he was one of the first people who actually left before the Cultural Revolution, and I think in that he kind of brought different ideas. When everyone else is saying, hey, you should stay, why would you ever leave, right? He was one of the brave pioneers who came, right? And I think that has changed my concept of what Taiwanese, means. It's not just purely, because of Taiwan, right? It's we're blending of people, right? And so I think just being Taiwanese sets us in a very unique situation where we're kind of already both. Right, we're possibly Chinese, possibly Taiwanese, possibly African, right, if we go back far enough, right? And I think that is actually possibly the similar feeling that I have towards being Taiwanese and American, stuck between two worlds, trying to find one that fits, but then probably never really finding one that fully fits. So we recreate our world around it, right? So for example, in Taiwan, we want to play pickleball, right? Which is a very, Western thing, right? But we build that community around it, right? And that's how we sort of envision that we will be able to satisfy both sides of the needs.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, welcome.